Welcome, everybody, to the sixth episode of Stories from the Last Territory, a podcast that covers the golden years of wrestling in Puerto Rico. My name is Luis Cuevas, better known as the Caveman, and I am your host for this trip back in time to the greatest feuds in the history of Puerto Rico. If you like what you hear and see, please subscribe to our YouTube channel or to any of your or wherever you listen to your podcast and all your favorite digital platforms. And please let others know about this content that we're trying to create about the history of Puerto Rico. Before Starcade or WrestleMania, Puerto Rico Wrestling had Aniversario, or the anniversary card of Capital Sports Promotions. It was a yearly event that pretty much concluded most of the major angles or storylines of the previous year, and was also the reset to start new storylines to carry on the promotion to the next year. In Puerto Rico, before this card, we had previously held supercars. For example, the famous October 16, 1982 card with Ric Flair versus Carlos Colon on top for the World Wrestling Council Heavyweight Champion. And in that card, also Invader 1 faced Dory Funk in a title versus title match. And every year before this, they held an event called Night of Champions Supercard that brought everybody from the different territories for one night of wrestling. Most of the time, it was a main event by NWA World Heavyweight Championship. But before we were part of the NWA, it was usually the conclusion of a feud for the North American title, the Puerto Rican title, or the Caribbean title. But this was the first one celebrating the birth of Capital Sports Promotions. Like everybody knows, Capital Sports Promotion was created in 1973. They held their first card in January of 1974, but this is the 10th year anniversary of the creation of Capital Sports Promotions of the World Wrestling Council by Victor Jovica, Carlos Colon, and Gorilla Monsoon. This card had wrestlers from close to seven different territories. Bob Sweetan from Southwest, Dory Funk Jr. and Ric Flair from the Mid Atlantic area during that time, Gorilla and Andre from the World Wrestling Federation, Gamma Sin from Calgary, Abdullah Tamba, Mil Máscaras, and Dos Caras from Mexico, Iron Sheik, who was, I believe, finishing in Georgia before going to the WWF, Don Ken, who was wrestling in Florida and Puerto Rico during this time, combined with the best local talent at that moment in the island, like Carlos Colon, King Tonga, Pierre Martel, Gran Apollo, the Super Medics, and Invader 1, and others. Sadly, from June 83 to March 84, there really is not a lot of TV, and which is sad because this was an awesome period that we don't have a lot of video TV programs covering the build up to anniversary 83 or a lot of the feuds that were going on and what led to some of the matches in this feud. So a lot of what we're going to be talking about is going to go about what I remember basically and what I have asked some of my fellow historians from Puerto Rico around that time that they remember. The main storyline in wrestling Puerto Rico since the summer of 1982, after the creation of the World Wrestling Council title, was the chase of Carlos Colon to unify the World Wrestling Council World title and the NWA World Heavyweight title to become the new Universal Heavyweight Championship. And the feud between Ric Flair and Carlos Colon have been the major part of this feud, with both exchanging victories. When Flair would defend the NWA World title, of course, Ric Flair will win, or the match will end with a count out, disqualification, time limit draw, and so on and so on. And when it was the World Wrestling Council title, well, Carlos will win, or the end result will be the same: a disqualification, a count out, a draw, and so on and so on. Once they announced plans for the anniversary card, it seemed that it was going to be the final battle between Ric Flair against Carlos Colon in a unification match, because that was the main feud and that was like the main storyline that was going on in Puerto Rico uh, during all that time for the heavyweight championship. But like they say, plans change. And in this case, Bob Geigo, according to the book The Last Real World Champion by Tim Hornbaker, Bob Geigo convinced the NWA to make a title switch, and Harley Race became the new NWA World Heavyweight Champion, which is cool. I love Harley. I think Harley is one of the greatest wrestlers of all time. But honestly, it was not the feud people wanted to see, in my opinion. Uh, it, People wanted to see the last battle between Ric Flair and Carlos Colon. But Race had defeated Carlos Colon for the NWA title in a couple major cards, both in 1981 and 1982. well, major cards in 1981. I apologize. And when the WWC World Title was established, in order to give it credibility to the world title, Carlos Colon had defeated Harley Race. So they try to use that as a major part of the storyline where I beat you in 81 and you beat me last year. Let's resolve it in anniversary 83. But to be honest, it lacked a little bit the the aura of Ric Flair versus Carlos Colon that had been building since 1982 in the island of Puerto Rico. The other major storyline had to do with Invader One and Ox Baker. This has to be considered Ox Baker's last great run in the island and maybe in pro wrestling. He came using his infamous hard punch with Riquin Sanchez on TV, selling the fact that he had killed two wrestlers previously with it. And Hugo Sabinovich, which was his manager, started saying that Baker was going to eliminate Invader and Carlos Colon. And he kept saying that over the weeks, and Baker started going through everybody in the roster of the baby faces one by one into finally getting to Invader 1. And in that match, the prophecy of Hugo Sabinovich became a reality when Ox Baker hit Invader with his hard punch and tries to pin him. But damn it, it is Invader. He cannot go down with only one punch like everybody else. So Ox Baker picks him up and hits him with four more hard punches and pin him. After the match, Invader starts shaking and going into convulsions while Hugo Sabinovich stand next to him pointing, Te lo dije, I told you so, ha, ha, and screaming to the fans, and I told you so, and laughing and enjoying and just egging on the fans. Ha, I told you so, I told you that he was going to do it. While the refs and the doctors and everybody are trying to help Invader, uh, the doctor gives him chest compression. I mean, it was a very wild angle. Say what you want about Jose Gonzalez Invader, but the man could sell an angle, a storyline, and make it seem real. I mean, he won an Academy Award. He should have been nominated for an Academy Award and an Emmy after this performance. I mean, he really put the hard punch, and he's jumping and compressing in the giving compressions. I mean, they end up putting Invader in an ambulance. You hear the people working the crew, giving some oxygen and everything, and they take him to the hospital. To sell the angle, they actually had him in a real hospital for a couple of weeks. While on TV, they were saying that Invader might have to retire. They did an angle where Carlos Colon bedside with Invader, saying that Ox Baker could have killed him, and that he was going to go for revenge against Ox Baker. And of course, Ox Baker, to the surprise of everybody, defeats Carlos Colon to win the World Wrestling Council with the hard punch. I mean, they really put over this hard punch like you could die with this thing. Uh, and for the next week, it was the Invader Watch. Like in the news when there's gonna be like a snowstorm, the snowstorm 2024, rain, tornado watch, or whatever. Well, it was the Invader Watch. Every week, you would be like, will he come back? Will he exact his revenge? Does he have to retire? They even did an interview with Riquin Sanchez's son, where he goes to Invader's house and they start talking and reminiscing about Invader's career and everything that was going on in his life and this and that. And I mean, they really went all out with this angle. And finally, of course, he came back attacking Ox Baker and looking for his revenge, but he was never getting it. So they set up a hard punch, as Invader was known in the island to have himself a very powerful hard punch that once he hits it, you go down. The super medics, Jose Estrada and Johnny Rods, have come down from the WWF with the super medic gimmicks alongside, I believe it was Jerry Oates at the beginning, and then later Duncan. I could be confused with the name, but there were three super medics, and they were using the fabulous Freebirds gimmick that had never been done in the island. So, and basically that idea took the island by storm, as they didn't know which one of the super medics they were going to face during the matches. They would flip or switch, kind of like the Killer Bees did in the WWF, where one would come in, one would come out. And so you never knew what was going on with the super medics, and it worked. And they were being managed by Barrabas, which at one time in the 70s was like the biggest rule breaker alongside Huracan Castillo Padre in the island, and they had won the North American and Caribbean tag team titles. And they were set to defend against local favorite tag team of Chief Thundercloud and his son Chewy. Yeah, Chewy. What kind of name is that? But anyway, so the Super Medics were like really, really hot at this time with that fabulous Freebirds gimmick and the three wrestlers with a mask switching each other. I mean, it was pretty wild and pretty cool at that time because it was something that had never been done in the island, so it worked. King Tonga had been one of the biggest rule breakers in the island in 1982. When he came in, he had a move that was banned on TV, and they would put like a black circle on the TV so you couldn't see it. So sometimes when he moved, you get to see it. You had to go to the cars to see his finishing move, and they saw this thing like it was the most dangerous thing. I believe it was the Cobra Crush, but they saw it like this move is so dangerous you cannot see it on TV, and they would put that black spot so you only could see it if you go to the live cards. But at the beginning of 1983, he started having trouble with Hugo Sabinovich. As in all the matches, Hugo Sabinovich would do something that would cost King Tonga a victory. He would, something would happen that it would messed up, and little by little, King Tonga was, getting mad with Hugo Sabinovich because it was costing him matches. And then Riquín Sanchez, God bless that man, every week will egg Hugo Sabinovich. Ooh, you cussed King Tonga another match, huh? How did that work out last night? And what I see what you're trying to do. You you're trying to break up the band, but no, everything's peaches and cream. There's nothing wrong with us, and something will happen, and King Sanchez will continue to egg him. Oh, I see you helped your boy King Tonga last night or last week, and Hugo will be like, really, you're gonna start with this crap again? I'm telling you, everything is fine between us. Everything is good. You don't have to worry about my army. Everybody's in the same page, and so and so. And they continued to build this for a couple of weeks, and it was pretty fun TV seeing Hugo Sabinovich getting all flustered while Riquín Sanchez were egging him about it, right? So finally, he had a match against Invader Uno. Hugo interfered with a 2x4 to hit Invader, but of course, Invader moved and he hit him. King Tonga costing him the match, which was not the first time that this had happened. After the match, Tonga had had enough, and he started telling Hugo, "What the hell happened? What are you doing?" And what Hugo was like, "Please, let's go to the dressing room," trying to make his case that it was a mistake. But King Tonga got fed up. He attacked Hugo to the delight of the fans, and all the rule breakers in Hugo's army came in to beat up King Tonga. Well, in kayfabe, as in real life, I think King Tonga will have whooped all of them. But he made the switch, and King Tonga became one of the most popular wrestlers or one of the biggest big baby face in the territory. And the story was that Hugo continuously would bring different opponents from the outside trying to take him out, and King Tonga, defeating them, all of them, while defending his Puerto Rico Heavyweight Championship. And the latest opponent on the list to try to take out King Tonga was former NWA World Heavyweight Champion Dory Funk, who came to the island by instructions of Hugo Sabinovich. Pedro Morales had incredible run in Puerto Rico. He had been world tag team titles. He had just won the North American title, and he was looking for vengeance. Oh, just looking for redemption against Ric Flair, as Flair had defeated him for the NWA World title in a NWA World title match in April 23, 1983, in San Juan, Puerto Rico. Now, Flair was the challenger, trying to take the North American title away from Pedro Morales in this during match between both ex-world champions. They had, this is the second time that they ever faced. This show politically was also very interesting, as Victor Jovic and Carlos Colon in the convention in Las Vegas had been the deciding vote in that convention to put the title back in Ric Flair's hands. So that was hanging over the air, as Harley Race had pushed with his promoter Bob Geiger to keep the title for a while, according to Tim Hornsbaker book. But Victor Jovic and Carlos Colon pretty much had the deciding vote in that convention to return the title back to Ric Flair. This was also the last show of both Gorilla Monsoon and Andre the Giant. Basically, the end of the very loose relationship between World Wrestling Federation and Capital Sports Promotion, which Gorilla have been a license bringing talent from that promotion to the island since the mid 70s. And thanks to that liaison of Gorilla Monsoon, we were able to see Bruno Sammartino in the island, Antonino Roca, Mr. Fuji, Professor Tanaka, and many other wrestlers that wrestle in the WWF. Well, Johnny Rods and Jose Estrada, they had been part of the WWF before this. And the rumor is that it was during this time where he saw his shares of the his percentage of the promotion to little Victor or Victor Quinones, who he had seen or who he saw as his son. Basically, he was not his real dad, but he just saw he was like a godfather to him. Somebody that he had taken over his wings, who then became the liaison between foreigners and the promotion into 1991 when he left the promotion over money and creative differences. And Victor Quinones did an excellent job because he brought different type of talent that made I think the promotion a little bit better than we had from what we had seen before the period of 1983. With all that going on, we go to the card that had an attendance of that was held on September 17, 1983 in Iran Bison Stadium in San Juan, Puerto Rico. We had more than 27,000 people in attendance. Tickets were $25 for red carpet, which would be like $78 in today's money. Ringside was $20, which would be $63 in today's money. General entrance was $10 or 20 something dollars. So let's say the average price for tickets were about $13, $14. Then we're talking about a gate of almost $400,000, which in today's money will be a little bit more than $1 million gate, which is mind blowing to think about that gate. They could run 50 cars right now in Puerto Rico and they will not even get to the $274,000. I mean, that's how different it is wrestling now from how it was in 1983. Sadly, to our knowledge, or that have come out, there are only two matches on video from this card. The rest, well, basically all we have is pictures, or we have a magazine that covers like Wrestling World, cover it. On the George Napolitano magazines did a lot of coverage of this card, and so that's all we have, except for two matches on video. The opening match was Miguel Perez pinning Barrabas at the 3 minutes and 42 seconds, which I thought was pretty cool. Cool. They had their flowers as Perez had been the biggest star in Puerto Rico in wrestling, and Barrabas in the 70s alongside Huracan Castillo Sr. had been one of the biggest rule breakers. So to see them both, even if it was a short match, was pretty cool. It was like a send off or an appreciation for all they have done for wrestling in Puerto Rico. At least that's my opinion. So I thought that was pretty cool that they had the two legends opening anniversary 1983. The other matches, Pete Sanchez defeated Assassin 2, Bob Sweetan pinned on Gamma Scene. Hercules Ayala was supposed to face on Dirty Dutchman there, but he could not make it. So Iron Chick at the last minutes, a couple months before winning the World Wrestling Federation title, came to the island and did the honors for Hercules Ayala. One thing you're gonna notice is most of the matches were short. I think less than 10 minutes, most of them. So it was a very, very quick card in some ways. Pierre Martel pinned Duncan. Well, there's also a reason. We're going to explain it later. Pierre Martel pinned Duncan at the 8 minute mark. Again, one of those cool moments. As this was Pierre Martel's last hurrah in the island. And to have him in this card when he had really been in the island almost from the beginning, first as a rule breaker and then as one of the most popular babyface, was a pretty cool moment, one of those good feel moments of the card. So I thought that was pretty cool that that they gave him his flowers that way. So to see him was pretty nice. Tamba pinned Gorilla Monsoon in a minute and 11 seconds. This was the last visit of Gorilla Monsoon, and he put over Tamba, which at that time was being pushed by the promotion as one of the up and coming rule breakers in the island. And this is one of the two matches that you can see on video. Just Google on Gorilla Monsoon versus Tamba, and you'll be able to see it. For the World Wrestling Council and Caribbean Tag Team Champs, the Super Medics defeated Chief Thundercloud and Chewie at the 6 minute mark. In the dream match, in a match that everybody, that grew up with the magazines and everything was expecting, for the North American title, Pedro Morales beat Ric Flair, but via DQ, and this was the last time that both of them faced each other at the 11:28 minute mark. And this is one of those matches that I wish we had video of it. It would be pretty cool to see them too. We don't have video of the world title, and we don't have video of the of this title. So sadly, they have been lost to time. For the Puerto Rican Championship, King Tonga defeated Dory Funk Jr. and retained his Puerto Rico title, continuing the trend of building King Tonga as this incredible wrestler, establishing him as the number two babyface of the company during this time. Invader won, got his revenge against Ox Baker, giving him the hard punch and taking him out in the stretcher, just like Ox Baker had done to him previously or months before. Kendo Nagasaki and Gran Apollo went up to 20-minute draw. The Gran Apollo was this wrestler who many people in Puerto Rico had saw that he had a great potential. Many people, inclusive, think that he should have been the new face of the company, but there were a lot of backstage politics. There were a lot of attitude problems. People hated him here for some reason, especially the rule breakers in real life. So there's a lot of rumors about why Gran Apollo never really became the star that he was supposed to become in Puerto Rico. And hopefully one day we're going to discuss that and all those crazy stories from Puerto Rico, the allegedly stories that have happened in the island of Puerto Rico. In really the main event, Carlos Colon and Harley Race drew to a 60-minute draw, which explains why all the other matches were short. I mean, they went to 60 minutes. At the end, Carlos Colon had Harley Race. According to the magazine reports, Carlos Colon had Harley Race in a figure four. Harley Race was about to quit, and of course, the bell rang, which was a ending that a lot of times happened during NWA World Heavyweight Championships. Mil Máscaras and Dos Caras defeated the Infernos that were composed at that time of Team Tall 3 and Gypsy Joe, who was also from Puerto Rico at the 8 minute and 20-second mark. And in the last match of the evening, Andre the Giant, in his last match in Puerto Rico, defeated Abdullah the Butcher via countout at the 9 minutes and 42. And there's video of this match, and it's pretty cool match. I mean, just to see Andre whooping Abdullah the Butcher was pretty cool, and just to see the reaction when Andre came through the crowd, you saw that, wow, look at this dude, he's huge. So that was the anniversary card, which was incredibly successful, to the point that to this day, that is like the big card of Puerto Rico anniversary. They had just celebrated last year anniversary 50. They're gonna do it again in August, I believe, aniversario 51. So they have done this through all these years, and this was the first one, and it established World Wrestling Council and Capital Sports Promotion as one of the most successful territories of the 80s, with that gate, with that attendance, with the quality of the matches that we had in that event. But incredibly, after this event, WWC went to like a weird phase, as we got a lot of exodus of talent. A lot of them went to Montreal, in this case, like Pierre Martel, for example. Others to Southwest, like Chiqui Star. Even Invader left to the WWF, and King Tonga became like the number two guy in the island. So it was a very interesting period for Capital Sports Promotion, and attendance suffered a little bit during this time, but they brought the Old Faithful. And by the Old Faithful, we mean every time attendance was going down, they will bring back Abdullah the Butcher for a couple of months, rev up the crowd again, and then he will leave again to whatever other territory or to Japan, which was his home base, I believe. So Abdullah comes back. He attacks Carlos Colon while Carlos Colon was doing an interview re, re, with Ricky Sanchez, putting over his head a fishnet and attacking him with a fork, while Hugo celebrating, saying that the fish have fallen. Cayó el pescado, the fish have fallen, the fish has been caught. And Abdullah is just whopping him with that fork, while Ricky was trying to get the faces in to come and help, while screaming to the director, cut, please cut, please cut. And The faces came in, and they like five of them to try to take Abdullah away from Carlos Colon. You could check this out on YouTube. Just put on Abdullah the Butcher attacks Carlos Colon. You might get like 20 of them, but it is somewhere in there because they repeat this angle every time they were in attendance problems. So this build up, to a match in Starcade, which they saw in Puerto Rico, like we cannot have this match in Puerto Rico, so we lend it to Starcade 83, and that's the famous match that you saw in Stark 83 where Hugo interfered and cost Carlos Colon the match. That led to more rematches in Puerto Rico, and then even a match with Carlos Colon and Hugo Sabinovich where Carlos Colon breaks Hugo's leg, and that is the start of the turn of Hugo Sabinovich as babyface. And then, they kept trying to bring different wrestlers, trying to heat up the territory into the established other talent. And in '84, we had an amazing year with Bruiser Brody and Stan Hansen coming to the island for the first time, and hopefully we'll be able to talk about that in a later podcast. So into this moment, this is our look at Anniversary 83, the first big super card of professional wrestling. Hope you guys have enjoyed it. Hope you guys understand what was going on in the island during this time and some of the matches. Sadly, they're not on video, so it's always going to be like a black hole that we're not going to be able to see Pedro Morales versus Ric Flair, or Carlos Colon versus Harley Race, Tonga versus Dory Funk, which have been very interesting to see from that card. Next week, we're going to come back with another look at one of the greatest feuds in the island. I'm not quite sure if I'm going to do Carlos versus Hansen or Carlos and Abdullah versus Brody and Hansen, but I'll figure it out sometime next week. Into then, please follow me at X at Cayman Sana W. You can also follow my Spanish podcast. We're celebrating 4 years and this coming week. So thank you everybody who has taken their time to listen to the Spanish podcast. It's called Desde los Territorios. You could find both at my YouTube page, Desde los Territorios per Wrestling Dumb. Uh, where if you see this video, you could subscribe there. Please do, as we want to continue to grow the channel, make it the history channel of wrestling from Puerto Rico. So hopefully you guys get a chance to subscribe and to continue to support this podcast. Into then, like I always say, like my mentor and one of the greatest voices of wrestling in Puerto Rico, Joaquin Padini, used to say, "Sayonara, amigos."